remember the fringe benefit tax which was introduced in 2005 and got abolished in 2010? Listen, FBT has come back now in the form of TDS by way of new section 194R introduced by Finance Act 2022. Scope of FBT was confined to the benefits and perquisites provided to the employees only. However, the section 194R is not applicable to the employees, but its implications are way beyond it. Hi everyone, my name is Abhishek Gupta. Welcome to today's video. In last couple of years, we have seen that every year government brings some new TDS and TCS provisions in income tax. For example, in recent past, we have seen that the government has introduced TDS and TCS on sale and purchase of goods, TDS on dividend, high rate of TDS and TCS on non-filer of return, TCS on foreign remittances, so and so forth. In current financial year as well, the government has come out with new TDS provisions. For example, TDS at the rate of 1% on virtual digital assets like cryptocurrencies, TDS at the rate of 10% on certain benefits and perquisites, which is today's hot topic. So what does it mean when we say why the government is bringing new TDS and TCS sections every year? So the answer is that the government has undertaken such a big exercise for the reason it is in full mood to expand the scope of TDS and TCS in order to keep tab on the income of every person, so that more people and more transactions could be brought under the tax framework and the tax base could be increased. It is quite interesting to note here that the share of TDS, which was 35% till last financial year, has grown to 58% now. So in today's video, I am going to speak about section 194R that has got applicable with effect from 1st July 2022. Look at this section. It looks quite simple, but it is very difficult to implement in real life scenario, and there are many challenges in its practical application. When I read this section first time when the Finance Bill 2022 was introduced in the Parliament, I was under the very good impression that this section would hardly be applicable in many cases. Thereafter, CBDT issued a circular to provide the guidelines to give effect to the provisions of this section. When this circular number 12/2022 dated 16 June 2022 came into picture, then only first time I could realize that things are not so easy as they appear to be. Then I scanned through the entire circular and tried to remove the dirt around it. This circular tries to address the issues arising from this amendment. This is important to note here that the section itself has empowered the CBDT to prescribe the guidelines for the purpose of removing the difficulties of the taxpayers. Very interesting part of this circular is that unlike other CBDT circulars issued under section 119, which are clarificatory in nature, this circular is going to be mandatory, meaning thereby once it is passed in both the houses of Parliament, it is binding upon the taxpayers as well as the courts. And we know that the tax authorities are always bound by these circulars. In view of the change scenario, a very strong school of thought has rendered a view that though this circular has been issued to provide the guidelines for removing the difficulties of the taxpayers, instead it has increased them in many ways by creating confusion and expanding the scope of section. Therefore, though this circular is binding in nature, many schools of thought are also opinion that even the binding nature of this circular cannot override the act and dilute the original intent of this section. Before beginning the detailed discussion on the amendment, I would like to make a very clear statement here that in each example taken here and after in the discussion, that the deductee is carrying on a business or profession. So what does this section say? This section says that with effect from 1st July 2022, every person responsible for providing any benefit or perquisite is required to deduct TDS at the rate of 10% if such benefit or perquisite has arisen from a business or profession exercised by the recipient. So every person responsible for providing a benefit is a deductor under this section, and in case of a company, it includes the principal officer thereof. I would like to add one more thing here, that the tax rate of 10% prescribed in this section would be replaced with 20% in case the deductee happens to be a non-PAN holder or is a person falling under the category of non-filer of ITR in view of the overriding effect of 206AA and 206AV. This section further lays down that a person who is an individual or HUF whose turnover does not exceed rupees 1 crore in a business or rupees 50 lakhs in a profession in last financial year is not required to make compliance under this section, and hence such a person does not come under the purview of a deductor. So individuals HUF, if they did not carry any business or profession in last financial year, need not to go with this section. So all the individuals HUF with a turnover of more than rupees 1 crore in a business or rupees 50 lakhs in a profession in last financial year are deductors for the purpose of this section. Similarly, all the companies, firms and all other persons, whether they are into business or not, or they have any turnover or not, are deductors. So the government is also likely to be covered as a deductor. Further, whether the deductor is a resident or non-resident does not make any difference. So a non-resident person is also covered as a deductor. Now when we ask a question, who is a deductee? So a deductee is a resident person carrying on a business of profession and is in receipt of a benefit or perquisite in the business of profession carried on by him. The deductee is a person who will bear the cost of TDS and will get the credit of the same after the TDS return is filed by the deductor. When we talk about when the TDS is required to be withheld under this section, so here unlike other sections, TDS is not deductible on payment or credit basis. Here the TDS will be deducted before the benefit is provided or released, or to say the point of providing is reached. But sometimes it could be a difficult task to determine when the point is reached. Reason being, there could be several stages in providing a benefit to a recipient. For example, a company provides foreign tours to its distributors who have achieved certain targets. 5 stages are possible in the delivery of foreign tours. Number 1. A provision is made in the books of account of the provider company for the estimated cost of foreign tours as at the balance sheet date. Number 2. The distributor intimates the foreign destination and timing when they want to proceed. Number 3. The provider company makes payment to the tour operator and books the foreign tour. The tickets are then handed over to the distributor. Number 5. Departure of the distributors to a foreign destination. In the said example, it may be prudent to deduct TDS on reaching the stage when the tickets are handed over to the distributor. When we say whether there is any threshold limit under this section, so if the aggregate value of benefit or perquisite provided to a resident during the financial year does not exceed rupees 20,000 per recipient per annum, no TDS is required to be done in this case. This limit of rupees 20,000 is computed from 1st April of the financial year, but the TDS is deductible only on the transactions taking place on or after 1st July 2022. Before moving to the next aspect of this section, let's understand the nitty-gritty of the threshold limit of 20,000 with certain illustration. Let's say on 1st July 2022, you provide a gift worth of rupees 21,000 to a person. You have to deduct TDS on the entire amount of rupees 21,000. Similarly, if the benefit provided to a person during the financial year is likely to exceed rupees 20,000, the deductor should start deducting TDS since the beginning, because according to this circular, if later on the amount exceeds rupees 20,000, the deductor might have to deduct TDS on the entire amount including rupees 20,000. So this is all about section 194R in a nutshell. So we can see that the underlying theme of this section is that if someone is giving anything free of cost or giving any favor which has the effect of creating any additional value in the business or profession carried on by other party with whom someone has entered into any business transaction. This is the responsibility of that person as a deductor to apply the provisions of this section and ensure deposition of tax at source in time on such additional value provided that the recipient is also a resident person carrying on a business or profession. Therefore, in order to deduct TDS under this section, it is essential that the other party with whom you are dealing with must be a resident person carrying on a business or profession, and due to a business transaction entered by you with such resident person, an additional benefit must have arisen in the business or profession carried on by such resident person. Let's understand this in a different manner. If a benefit or perquisite is given to a person who is an ultimate consumer of the said benefit or perquisite, or to say who is not a business guy, no TDS is required to be done. So the benefit received in the personal capacity is not subject to TDS. Benefit received in the business capacity is only subject to TDS, and this is a very necessary ingredient of this section. So anyone who tries to establish a benefit received in the professional capacity or in the capacity as a businessman as a benefit received in a personal capacity is not desirable by this section. Another important thing that one should keep in mind is that a business or profession includes a vocation as well. So, person engaged in the occupation of preaching is also considered to be a business or profession. Therefore, a land gifted to the preacher by his devotee who has got benefited from his preaching shall be considered to be a receipt arising from the exercise of business or profession liable to TDS. Now, to understand the meaning of a business discussed in the context of a recipient, some of the principles that have emanated from various court decisions are that it cannot be a one-off transaction. In order to call a business or profession, there has to be an actual business wherein there is some sort of regularity or there is a series of transactions involved. Therefore, an argument can always be built that a stray or an isolated transaction does not constitute a business, hence TDS shall not be attracted in such a case. So it is relevant to highlight here that carrying on a business or profession by a resident person is a prerequisite in order to invoke the provisions of section 194R. However, the deductor essentially is not required to check under which head of income the deductee is going to report his taxable income, whether under the head income from business or profession or under any other head, let's say under the income from other sources. Let's quickly pick up a few examples on group companies. One may argue that interest-free loan given by the parent to its subsidiary company is not subject to TDS since there is no business involved between the two and merely parent and subsidiary relationship cannot be a basis for deduction of TDS. And the same thing can also be argued for the corporate guarantee given by the parent for subsidiary. But when the subsidiary is into money lending business or when subsidiary is securing some kind of business for the parent, then interest-free loan or guarantee given could be a benefit liable to TDS. Similarly, if a company has taken a bank loan and there is a waiver of such loan or interest by the bank, then such waiver could be considered an extra benefit provided since the bank is into money lending business. Similarly, if a company has taken some bank loan and there is a waiver of such loan or interest by the bank, such waiver could be considered an extra benefit provided since the bank is into money lending business with the company. Therefore, the shared services and common management costs amongst the group companies can come on the radar of this section and which can be a worrisome sign for many companies. When we look at what is the meaning of benefit or perquisite, they have not clarified anything in the Act. But the term benefit or perquisite has a very wide connotation. So any concession given by any seller to the buyer or vice versa, an extra price is charged by the seller from the buyer will be considered as a benefit provided, and if we have provided the same, we have to deduct TDS. So what is the benefit of perquisite? We have to decide upon that, and if we fail to do so, the tax authorities will make evaluation in their own way and disallow 30% of the expenditure for non-deduction of TDS. The meaning of perquisite is what we generally understand in the context of employees, like allotting the shares free of cost or at concessional rate, or providing gifts or facilities. So a perquisite can be defined to mean an amenity or a facility that is provided or an obligation of the recipient that is discharged by the payer. As we go through some of the case laws to understand the meaning of benefit as discussed in the context of other sections of the Act, some of the principles that come to our mind is that benefit has to be an extra advantage that is derived by a person over and above what is normally expected from a business transaction. Another important point to discuss is with whose perspective benefit has to be seen. Then it would clearly be with perspective of a recipient only, though it has to be decided by the deductor. It has to be in the nature of income in the hands of recipient, however may not be actually taxable in his hand. So anything notional or abstract or not real should not be covered here. So one may always argue that the interest-free refundable security deposit provided to the landlord to secure normal wear and tear of the property may not be an extra benefit provided to the landlord, hence not subject to TDS, and we can fight on that. Correspondingly, if the property is rented out on heavy deposits, it could be a case of benefit, and here deemed interest cost could be a tax deductible item. So the determination whether the benefit has arisen is a very fact-based analysis, and the facts of each transaction have to be examined independently. So the rule-based approach fit to all the situations may not be workable here. Another important point to be noted here is that if the benefit of perquisite provided is factored into the price charged and the price charged is correspondingly lowered for the benefit of perquisite provided, then there is a sense to apply that no benefit of perquisite has arisen from the business or profession, and ideally no TDS is required to be deducted. For example, you engage a vendor to execute a work order for an X amount. Now if for some reason you agree to provide some machinery or logistic support at the site to the vendor and price charged by the vendor is renegotiated and reduced for the corresponding additional benefit provided, TDS is not required to be deducted on such extra benefit provided. Now what is the document basis you would be deducting TDS under this section? Can you imagine? So generally you might not be having any invoice like document in this case, and neither you might be having an accounting entry, and hence there is a need to create a document for the benefit of perquisite provided in order to substantiate before the tax authorities and the auditors that the applicable tax was rightly deducted. Let's take an example on purchase of 1000 iPhones required for distribution to the dealers. There are two events here. In the first one, you will deduct TDS under section 194Q. There will be proper invoice and accounting entry for vendor payable and TDS payable, and you will pay TDS under section 194Q thereon on 7th of the next month, right? But in the second event, when you will hand over the phones to the dealers, you will not have any accounting entry, you will not have any invoice or other document. In such a case, you need to create a document through systematic arrangements in your company and pass the necessary accounting entry for deduction of TDS. Now the deductor says that the amount is not going to be taxable in the hands of the recipient, or the deductee is not going to offer the same in the ITR to be filed by him. So he is not under any obligation to deduct TDS under this section. This argument is not valid, since this section has made it very clear that the TDS is deductible irrespective of the benefit is taxable in the hands of beneficiary or not. So one who argues that the amount provided is a capital receipt in the hands of the recipient and hence not taxable is not going to help the deductor. Let's take an example. A car is given by Tata Motors on non-returnable basis to its distributor for display in the showroom. Tata Motors will deduct TDS on the value of this car even if the receipt of this car is going to be depreciable as capital asset in the hands of the distributor. Let's pick up another example on this aspect. A entered into an agreement for purchase of plot from B. The seller takes a U-turn and eventually did not grant the possession of the land to the buyer. And at the end, seller agrees to settle the dispute for rupees 35 lakhs paid to the buyer. Now, if the deductor argues that this receipt of rupees 35 lakhs has arisen out of a capital asset, hence it is not taxable in the hands of the recipient since it is in the nature of a capital receipt, this argument is not valid at all and TDS is deductible under this section on such transaction as well. On the other side, one may always argue and fight on that if someone has actually incurred a loss or damage and he is compensated for such a loss or damage incurred, he is not going to get an extra benefit and hence he is not taxable to the extent of such cost of damage or loss arising to him. For example, X purchased certain goods from Y against full payment made before the delivery of goods. During transportation, all the goods went spoiled, against which Y compensated by making reverse full payment to X. This compensation against actual loss incurred by X ideally should not be held to be an additional benefit provided and hence should not be subjected to TDS. So applying the same ratio, insurance claims received should also not be tax deductible. Point number 2. We all understand that the benefits of perquisites are considered to be provided in kind only. So if one who argues that the benefit has no value and it is not marketable and no money value can be realized out of it in the open market, hence TDS is not deductible. So this section has made it very clear that TDS is deductible irrespective of the benefit is convertible into money or not. Point number 3. As we all understand that gifts, benefits and perquisites are non-cash items, or to say they are provided in kind generally. However, the way the section is worded, it is applicable on all kinds of benefits whether provided in cash or in kind. The circular itself through many illustrations emphasizes to cover the benefits and perquisites provided in cash too, whether they are wholly in cash or partly in cash. So whole cash transaction of benefits are also considered to be benefits and perquisites for the purpose of TDS deduction under this section. For example, cash gifts distributed to the dealers are tax deductible. Point number 4. If the benefit or perquisite is provided or used by any director or an employee or a consultant or any other person affiliated or associated with any entity, it is the entity in whose name TDS will be deducted, not the individual employee or director, since these named persons are getting benefit by virtue of their privity with the entity. Let's understand this with an example. A manufacturing company has to provide certain gifts to the distributors. Now, in order to avoid TDS, the company plans to distribute the gifts to the employees and relatives of the distributor company, since they are not into any business in their own capacity. Here the manufacturing company is at gross mistake and its plan to not deduct TDS is not workable, since the circular has already made it very clear that even in such cases TDS is required to be done in the name of entity only. So here the distributor entity is the deductee only. However, in case the benefits are provided to the consultants and other outside persons like affiliates, an option has been granted that TDS can directly be done in the name of affiliates or consultants. Point number 5. This is very interesting point, so listen it very carefully. Now we have already discussed that the benefits and perquisites can either be in cash or in kind, partly in cash or partly in kind. Now one may argue that it is not a benefit or perquisite, rather it is a consideration for sale of goods or services. TDS under this section is not deductible and is deductible under the respective other section. For example, the manufacturing company incentivizes its dealers by way of percentages of commission of sales target met by them, is liable to TDS at the rate of 5% under section 194H instead under the section 194R. Correspondingly, very important, if someone passes on certain benefit or perquisite or pays any consideration to someone in the course of business or profession, either in cash or in kind, if such benefit or perquisite or consideration is otherwise not tax deductible under any other section, then in such a case your tax office may try to cover this as a benefit under section 194R as a residual TDS section. So invariably this section may try to cover all the residual situations of TDS deduction. Point number 6. Benefits and perquisites are generally considered to be voluntary nature. If someone argues that the benefit was given in pursuance of a contract or on achieving certain performance target, does not make any difference. Now we highlight certain instances where TDS is not deductible under section 194R. When the benefits or perquisites are given to the employee, then by virtue of employee and employer relationship, TDS is deductible under section 192. It may be noted that this newly inserted section 194R is applicable only in respect of benefit or perquisite provided to a resident. This does not mean that there is no TDS obligation in respect of benefit or perquisite provided to a non-resident. The obligation to deduct TDS in respect of a non-resident is already covered under the provisions of section 195, wherein TDS is deductible if the income is chargeable to tax in the hands of non-resident in India. Further, under section 195, TDS is deducted at rates in force which are mentioned in the relevant Finance Act or the rates provided under DTAA, whichever is more beneficial to the SSE. If the benefit or perquisite provided does not have any connection with the business or profession carried on by the recipient, or if the benefit or perquisite are provided to a customer who is not engaged in a business or profession, or to say if the benefit is given to an ultimate consumer. For example, if a business entity gifts a car to its resident customer, no TDS shall be deducted under section 194R if a resident customer is not carrying on any business or profession. However, if it is in the nature of lottery winning etc., TDS will be deducted in the respective section, TDS on winning from lotteries. Similarly, donation gifts to charitable institutions are not tax deductible since they are not into business or profession. TDS is not applicable if the recipient is a government entity or it is a government agency like a government hospital. Further, Holi Diwali gifts to individuals in the offices are not subject to TDS if the entities for whom they are working for are not into any business or profession, if they are employees of government agencies or entities. Next, printer given free on sale of cartridge is not a benefit since the cost of printer will be recovered through the sale price of the cartridge and hence it is a price adjustment. So all the price adjustments are not subject to TDS. Same rule will also apply in case of a Xerox machine is installed in an office where there is no price is charged for the Xerox machine, but price is charged for the copies of Xerox taken. So here also TDS will also not be deducted. One may ask a question whether bad debts written off in the books of account is liable to TDS or not. The short answer is no. So the unilateral act of writing of debt in the books of account is not subject to TDS since it is not an act of giving a benefit to someone. There could be a difficult situation when the seller offers schemes like buy one get one, giving 2 free items on purchase of 10 items. In such a situation, in order to remove the difficulty in applying the provisions of section 194R, it is clarified that TDS is not deductible. However, the situation would be different in case of free samples are given. So if a different item is bundled with a product, TDS is deductible. For example, free car accessories given with car, 20% extra biscuits or butter given, TDS is not deductible. However, if a free coin is given with a car, TDS is deductible. Similarly, discounts or rebates like cash discount, trade discount, quality discount, quantity discount, whatever discount, though they are benefits provided, but for removal of difficulties of the taxpayers, they are excluded from the applicability of TDS deduction under this section. Thus, in case the seller sells 100 pieces of toys of rupees 50 each at a discounted value of rupees 45 each, no TDS will be deducted. Similarly, a seller selling 100 items and giving 5 items free. Here the buyer is actually purchasing 105 items at a price of 100 items. In this situation, it has been clarified if the invoice mentions the 100 items as well as 5 items as part of the scheme, then no TDS is required to be deducted. But in case 5 items are given as a free sample, then TDS shall be deducted. Accordingly, it is advisable that free samples are not given independently and rather are invoiced along with other items. So we can say that distribution in the name of free samples, even promotional items, gifts, donations are now not free and will be liable to TDS now. Similarly, incentives in the form of cash or kind such as car, TV, gold coins, mobile phones, loyalty points, vouchers, target-based schemes, conditional gifts are liable to TDS. Sponsor a trip to a resident or relatives achieving certain targets is liable to TDS. Free tickets for an event liable to TDS. Many a times, social media influencers are given a product of a manufacturing company so that he can use the product and make audio or video to speak about that product in a social media. If the product is retained by them, it is a benefit liable to TDS. For example, Ranbir Kapoor is doing an advertisement for a laptop brand on a TV screen. If under the contract the laptop displayed on the screen is returned to the company, no TDS is deductible, but if it is retained by Ranbir Kapoor, TDS is deductible. Now, if someone asks a question, what about makeup cost incurred by the company on the actor? In this case, since the makeup is consumed in the course of ad, no TDS is deductible on the cost of makeup consumed since makeup was done for the benefit of the company itself, not for any benefit of the actor. However, if the balanced makeup kit is retained by the actor, TDS is deductible on the balanced makeup items retained by the actor. One more important question, what if the asset provided is retained till the end of useful life of the asset? Or to say the asset is provided for use for a longer period. What should be the right answer? So applying the same ratio, if the asset is given on returnable basis, TDS should not be deducted. Coming to the point of out-of-pocket expenses incurred by the consultants or contractors and reimbursed by the entity. We all know TDS is deductible under section 194J or 194C, as the case may, if the bill for the same is not issued separately. Now section 194R has created some sort of overlapping with section 194J and 194C. So previously when TDS was deductible under section 194C and 194J on reimbursement of expenses, now TDS is deductible under section 194R if the bills of expenses incurred by the consultant or the contractor are not in the name of entity. If the original bills of expenses incurred by the consultant or contractor are in the name of the entity and the payment is made by the consultant or the contractor, reimbursement for the same can be obtained from the entity without TDS deduction. For instance, a lawyer based out of Delhi in order to provide services to its clients may have to travel to Bangalore. The expenses incurred on travel and hotel stay are ordinarily reimbursed by the client as out-of-pocket expenses. In this context, CBDT has clarified the reimbursement of expenses in such case shall also be considered as a benefit for the purpose of this section 194R. However, it has been clarified that reimbursement in such case shall not be considered as a benefit or perquisite if the invoice for such expenses to be reimbursed is in the name of the person reimbursing such expenses, client in the given case. Next, if someone has provided extended credit period from normal 60 days, let's say 180 days, TDS might be applicable. Similarly, if someone sells good at a price lesser than ordinarily charged, TDS might be applicable. For example, you have sold some goods to your related person at a price lesser than usual market price. TDS might be applicable. I am not talking about the usual discounts provided to all the customers equally in the normal course of business, which we have discussed before. Sometimes free shares are allotted to the consultants and directors in the course of business or profession, so that they should continue to provide their services in the company. It is also a benefit subject to TDS. Similarly, a client provide rent-free accommodation to a lawyer for winning his case. It is a benefit liable to TDS. Now let's discuss about the business conferences. TDS is not required to be deducted on dealer or business conferences if it is held predominantly for business purposes, or to say prime objective for the same is to educate dealers or customers about the aspects like new product being launched, discussion as to how the product is better than others, obtaining orders from dealers' customers, teaching sales techniques, addressing queries of dealers' customers, reconciliation of accounts with dealers' customers, so and so forth. On the other side, TDS is deductible in the following situations. Conference held to incentivize select dealers or customers who have achieved particular targets. Here select and achieved are keywords. Expenses on leisure trip, leisure components, even if it is incidental to dealer or business conference. Sometimes family members of the dealers are also allowed to attend the business conferences. So the expenses attributable to family members is a benefit liable to TDS. Expenses on prior stay or overstay beyond the date of business conference is a benefit liable to TDS. So we can say that the same day expenses on conferences only are not tax deductible. Here taxing the stay of family members and the stay prior to and after the conference is understandable. However, the circular envisages to cover the expenses attributable to the leisure trip or leisure component, even if it is incidental to dealer or business conference. This clarification may lead to litigation. Let's say a corporate organizes a dealer conference in Goa for 3 days, wherein the hotel stay and all the meals are paid for. The dealer conference normally takes place during the daytime, 10 am to 5 pm. In such a case, revenue may argue that expenses attributable to the hotel stay and night meals shall be considered as a leisure component and should be considered as a benefit. Taxpayer, on the contrary, may argue that the same should not be seen as a benefit, as it is a normal practice that hotel stay and meals are covered during 3-day period during which dealer conference takes place. This clarification thus may lead to litigation between the taxpayer and department. Taxpayers will now be required to identify as to whether there is any leisure component in the dealer conference, and expenses attributable to the same shall be required to be considered as a perquisite. Now coming to the point how the TDS liability can be discharged by the deductor. So it can be discharged in either of the following ways. Payer can pay out of his own pocket. So here the value of benefit and tax both will be required to be grossed up. For example, if the value of benefit is rupees 1000, then corresponding TDS benefit given at the rate of 10% will arise rupees 100. So the total benefit given will be 1100. Now on the benefit of rupees 1100, we will compute TDS by grossing up by dividing by 90 and multiplying by 10, which will give us a figure of 122.22. Alternatively, the deductee can give cash to the payer to meet the TDS liability. Next, TDS can also be deposited by debiting the TDS amount to the account of the pay if it has a credit balance. Next, pay can himself pay TDS and provide the copy of the challan to the payer. In this case, the recipient can pay tax in the form of advance tax. Tax deductor can rely on the declaration provided by the deductee along with the copy of challan. This challan is required to be reported by the deductor in 26Q TDS return. Now in this model, what is the problem? If you are hosting a party, let's say for 1000 dealers, you can imagine how many challans you are going to receive for a single party. So this model is not feasible. Coming to the valuation part, value of the benefit of perquisite is determined based on the fair market value of the benefit of perquisite, except it is purchased or manufactured by the provider. In such a case, purchase price or the price charged from the customers, as the case may be, will be considered to be the value of perquisite or benefit for the purpose of TDS. If the benefit is given in the form of services, then the price paid to the service provider shall be considered to be a benefit provided. Suppose you are providing a foreign tour package to select dealers. Payment made to the tour operator shall be considered to be a benefit provided. Next, in case of a manufacturing company sells goods to the distributor. Distributor sells goods to the dealers. Now, who is a customer for the manufacturing company for the purpose of price charge? So, for a manufacturing company, a distributor will be considered to be a customer since he is a immediate person. It is also clarified in the circular that the GST component will be excluded for the purpose of TDS irrespective of the input credit availed or not. Despite so many guidelines provided on the valuation part, there would still be challenges in determination of the price. For example, if you have a system of charging different prices for different types of customers, or if different prices are charged for goods sold at different forums. For example, online customers are charged lesser than the offline customers. What pricing policy we will adopt for the purpose of TDS? In such circumstances, it is advisable whatever one is adopted should be reasonable and consistent. Coming to the doctors, when free medicine samples are provided by a pharma company to the doctors working as an employee in a hospital, TDS is required to be deducted in the name of hospital even the benefit is given to the individual employee. The hospital in turn may credit the perquisite in the hands of employee doctor and deduct TDS under section 192 considering it as a part of salary. These salary expenses are allowed deduction in the taxable income of the hospital. Hospital can claim refund of TDS deducted by furnishing ITR. So ultimately the transaction will get taxed in the hands of the employee doctor only and not in the hands of the hospital. However, in case of the benefit provided to the doctor working as a consultant, TDS can directly be deducted in the hands of the recipient doctor. So whether the subject is a benefit or perquisite or not depends upon the facts of each case. Suppose a company is required to incur certain expenditure on furnishing its rented outlets in such a way that all the premises should look uniform. In this case, though the premises are owned by the landlord, the benefit should not be subject to TDS since the landlord is not going to gain anything out of it. Whatever benefit will arise either to the company itself in the form of increased business or to the distributor running the outlets, even if the furniture of fixtures left over there after the lease period. After so long discussion, we can conclude that this circular tries to settle many issues. Still, there are many open issues and practical challenges in implementation of the provisions of this section, which will settle down only in due course with the time. So effectively, we will have no concrete answer to certain questions. For example, if the company organizes a conference predominantly for business purpose and if there is any incidental leisure component involved therein, it is almost next to impossible to track and work out the value of such component. Quite often, due to logistics and other reasons, dealers might have to reach the destination a day before the day of conference. So if the circular intends to take such type of prior stay as well, it is going to be a very difficult proposition. Next, if the deductor deducts TDS on the particular item of benefit, whether he will be allowed deduction of the expenditure on which he has deducted TDS. Whether small items like watch, clock, diary, where predominant object is sales promotion, will also be treated as benefit or perquisite subject to TDS. Generally, in many situations, a deductor deducts TDS safer side, since it is understood that invariably the deductee will get credit of the same. Then in such a situation, department can always tax the benefit amount in the hands of the recipient based on TDS entry provided in 26 years. Now, if safer side, the deductor deducts TDS, but recipient do not offer the same in the return, whether TDS credit will be available to the recipient or not. Section 197 is not amended. So, if the taxpayer faces challenge to comply with the circular, he cannot apply for nil or lower deduction certificate. Similarly, if someone does not want TDS deducted on reimbursement of out-of-pocket actual expenses, invoices are required to be obtained in the name of entity who will reimburse the expenses. Do you think is it so easy to obtain the invoices in the name of other entity? So these are certain issues which in my opinion will affect all of us. In spite of the so many challenges, we still have to be TDS compliant because it is the deductor who will face the music in case of non-deduction. That's all from my side and I will see you the next time. Thank you for watching.